Hello everyone, Steve Smith here. Yesterday, that is Thursday the 8th of April, one of our favourite commentators, Femi, he posted a speech to social media, and the poor boy, he got absolutely lampooned for this speech yesterday. It seemed that it hot no marks. The left just reamed him. It was quite funny to see this because social media reamings can be quite entertaining. It sometimes there wasn't a lot of hate in it. There was a lot of banter and a lot of memery, which is always acceptable. But that said, I prefer to laugh at things when I know what I'm laughing at, and I prefer to give things a fair shake. So I wanted to check this out. So I went and found the tweet. This is the tweet we've seen from Femi. So right off the bat, I was curious because it seems like he's speaking directly to Keir Starmer. This is the speech, Keir Starmer. You can choose to inspire people with clear and hopeful vision for the UK, or you can choose to not. Now, anyone that watches my channels knows that I cover politics quite a lot. I talk about Keir Starmer directly every single week and analyse the nonsense he comes out with every single week. We know he finds it very difficult to inspire people, and he has no clear vision for the UK at the moment. So I was really interested to see what Femi had to say. I wanted to see if Femi knew the answers to Keir Starmer's issues. So what I'm going to do today is we're going to read the speech. Mr. Steve here is going to read the speech. After every paragraph, we'll stop. We'll have a little powwow. And we'll see if it's a good speech, you know what I mean? Because, many people seem to think it wasn't a very good speech, but I am not many people. Many people are not many people. Everyone has their own opinions, and it's only fair that we give this a fair shake, you know? We've got to be fair with it. So, let me get the first page on the screen for you just now, and let's get into this. Okay, let's do this. I don't want to be in charge of the United Kingdom. You don't want me in charge of the United Kingdom. No single person should have absolute power. As they say, absolute power corrupts absolutely. And boy, have we seen some corruption. The power belongs to the people, and no party has the support of all the people. So, it is democratically ridiculous that one man has absolute power over the UK. Simply because he holds the whip over a party most people voted against. And it would be no less ridiculous if that party was Labour, but a vote for Labour in the next election will finally give the power to the people in all future elections. No person should have absolute power. That's a fair enough point, but it's fair to say that more people voted for Labour than voted Conservative in the last election, but the fact of the matter is Conservatives won the elections. Elections are competitions. That's just it. You've got to face it. I digress. Under the voting system we have now, one MP is elected in every constituency, which means that all the votes for the candidates of other parties mean literally nothing. Yeah. So imagine if 40% voted for the Conservative Party in every constituency and the rest was split 30-30. That would mean all the MPs in Parliament would be Conservatives, even if the 60% of the country voted for left-wing parties. That's not a democracy, that's a joke. So instantly I'm starting to see why people lampoon Femi over this. He's starting to mention left-wing parties again, which is pretty funny, pretty rich coming from Mr. Fem. Under the voting system now, he's right what he says, but it's a fair system. If you win the most votes, you get elected. I can see where he's going with this. I feel like we're talking about proportional representation here, aren't we? This is the elections. Elections need to change rhetoric. So let's continue. For example, in the 2019 general election, over half of UK voters chose Labour, the SNP, the Lib Dems, the Greens or Plaid Cymru, just like in 2017. And, despite less than 44% voting Conservative, the Tories won their 80-seat majority, giving them absolute power. So the UK's votes are not equal. A Labour Party that stands for equality cannot stand for that. The only other country in Europe that uses our voting system is Belarus, a country referred to by some as Europe's last dictator. Now, I actually like what he did, that last line there, because that last line there, the only other country that uses voting system is Belarus, is total rhetoric. Like, I've said this in most videos, rhetoric is just persuasion. That is him trying to persuade us that the system we use is unfair, using one example. Now, that's fair enough, but we don't live in Belarus, so we don't know how fair or unfair it is. We know it's unfair because we're told it's unfair, but we don't actually know if it is unfair. I mean, he talks about half the voters chosen Labour and all this sort of stuff. I mean, if you come north of the border, most of the MPs are SNP, so sure, SNP don't have power, but that's not the fault of the voting system. That's the fault of the way the parliament is built, you know? And what this totally ignores is the media and how media play in elections. I mean, the way it's going, it feels like it's just like PR is the answer, and it's not the answer, because it doesn't matter what sort of election system you use. If someone's got control of media and how medias work and how people digest media, then they can convince people to vote whatever way they want. That's how elections work in 2021, 2020. But let's continue. This is your country. Politics isn't supposed to be a game between politicians where all that matters is which politician comes first, even if the majority wouldn't touch them with a 10-foot pole. You should be able to vote for the party you feel most represents you. You can. Many of you have lived your whole lives in constituencies where the vote has never mattered because the same party was practically guaranteed to win, and Labour and the Conservatives have been able to take advantage of that system to leave you behind for generations. It just is what it is. Some areas are more conservative than others. Some areas are more socialist than others. Some areas have more rich people. Some areas have more middle class people. Some areas have more poor people. And what you tend to find is that is more of a driver on the vote than, like, what this says here. It's not about being able to vote for another. We can vote for other parties. I can easily vote for any other party than the Conservatives. It doesn't matter. Like, in the constituency I stay in, Aberdeen South, this is what happened at the last general election. In the last term, Ross Thompson held the seat. And in this next election, everyone voted SNP because everyone wanted to get Ross Thompson out of the seat. And they didn't want the seat going back to Labour. And it went to SNP. People voted for who they wanted to vote for. This is what happens. And this comes back to the whole media intervention here. There's a large point being missed here where people are coerced into doing things by the media around them and the environment around them. There's a lot more to it than just where you put your tick in a box and how many ticks you can put in boxes, you know? So let's continue. That's why within 12 months of taking office, Labour will adopt a new voting system where your vote will finally count. That means larger constituencies, which will produce several MPs each, so that even if your party only gets 5% of the vote, you will still be represented in Parliament. Now, I disagree with this, because this is participation medals. This is a political participation medal. Now, I'll get into why I disagree with this sort of thing at the end of this. This will reshape British politics. True, but we don't know if it would be for the better or not, or we don't actually know if it would. Like, it's a total speculation at the moment that it would change British politics, it would reshape politics. Who's to say it will? I mean, for starters, we will become more tolerant of each other's views because the winner-takes-all system will be gone. The politicians who make their case convincingly and work with others will be the ones who hold the most influence. Now, I'm sorry, Femi, but there's no way in your head you believe that sentence to be true. If you believe that is a true statement, then you are being extremely naive. Because changing how people vote will not make people more tolerant of people's views. People will still be annoyed at other views. This is just life. This is just what humans are like, you know what I mean? The winner-takes-all system doesn't cause people to disagree with things. No, people disagree with things because it's human nature. And this whole thing, the politicians who can make their case convincingly and work with others will be the ones that hold the influence. Again, that is pie in the sky, mate. That is total pie in the sky. We have seen that over the years. It doesn't matter who makes their case best. It doesn't matter who makes the best case. What matters in the British electoral systems is who spends the most money, who puts out the most media, and who can trick people into voting for them, who can convince people to vote for them over voting for someone else. It will always be like this, because elections, no matter how you fight them, will always be battles between peoples and their ideologies. That is what an election is. Well, let's continue. We will maintain the local connection between politicians and the people by devolving more powers to the regions. It's only by giving a real voice to every region that we can deliver the precise infrastructure and opportunities that those areas need. Now, the next bit's about Scotland, but this first bit's actually a bit about Scotland as well. It's actually a bit offends me a little bit, right? Scotland is not a region, right? Scotland is a country. We are a country with our own people. We have our own culture. We have our own laws, our own languages, everything. We are our own country. Like, England took over Scotland in 1707. This happened, right? Devolution to Scotland was to try and placate us because we want to have control over our own country. We don't understand why people in England are so offended by this notion. And the whole notion of devolving powers to regions and this stuff, that is essentially treating every other region in England like Scotland. And I don't think people down south understand how this can offend people, because it does offend people, because you're treating Yorkshire like Scotland, you're treating Humberside like Scotland, you're treating London like Scotland, when the fact is that London's a city, all that places are regions. We're a country, you know what I mean? It's a bit of a stretch. Now let's continue. To Scotland, I can only say I'm sorry for the treatment you've had from Westminster since 2014. The treatment you have had from Westminster since 2014 has been shocking. If we were truly a union of equals, then Scotland must be able to run its own affairs to the precise extent that the people of Scotland wish it to. It is not for Westminster to decide. Now, the latter portion of that paragraph, I absolutely agree with. He is bang on the money there. the whole apologising to Scotland bit, like, don't apologise. You don't need to apologise. Keir Starmer doesn't need to apologise. No one that's alive now really needs to apologise, except for the governments that want to keep us in the union. This is the statement that the treatment you've had since 2014 has been shocking. It's like, mate, 2014. Try 1707. Like, this has been going on for centuries. Like the Tory notion and the Tory rhetoric and the Tory lie, it's not Tory, sorry, conservative, because it's conservative, small c conservative, not Tory. It's been a lie since 1707 that Scotland was somehow delighted to join the union. That is disproven. That is not right. There was, like, at the time, people have looked back in history. Lucy Worsley did a great episode of Great British Fibs on this exact topic. There were masses of petitions at the time. People in Scotland did not want to join the British Union. They did not want to form a union with England. Very little people spoke up in favour of it. Yet, because the people in London are the people that controlled the media at the time, they controlled everything, the rhetoric was spread through history and time that Scotland somehow wanted to be a part of this union. It is disproven nonsense, right? Just nonsense. And yeah, we've been treated like crap up here since a lot earlier than 2014. That is why we tried to have an election in 2014. This has been going on as long as I can remember. I mean, I'm not even going to go into different examples because they are many and extensive. Needless to say, Scotland has been treated like shit for a lot longer than 2014. You know what I mean? It's been a lot longer than 9 years or whatever that is. I don't know, it's early. Let's continue. The next election isn't about us politicians. It's not about the politics of any one party or any faction within a party. It's about you. For many of those who voted to take back control, it's because you knew the political class were in control, not you. You knew your vote wasn't listened to under the system. Let us fix that. Now, this is actually quite controversial because this statement here, when you start talking about the political classes controlling you and tricking you and you're not being listened to in the system, this is actually the sort of rhetoric that the far right are using. Like this is swamp. This is swampy sort of stuff. This is politics as a swamp. Politics as a murky swamp that's against you. We need to take back control. That is, I mean, I can see what he's doing with this. Obviously, this is Femi's speech he feels Keir Starmer should give to win everyone over and put Labour back to a broad church. But I have to throw it in here. Do you really want to bring everyone back in? Do you really feel the need to use this sort of thing where you're attacking the systems so badly? I mean, yeah, the systems are bad, but in this, I mean, I'm maybe not, I don't think I'm giving the nuance right here. I mean, I've heard only people I've heard talking about taking back control from political classes and the stuff in this way are more further right parties than left. So I'm maybe misreading that. I am most likely, I could be misreading that, but I am fairly sure that does not resonate with me, and that is kind of disturbing in that bit, you know. Sadly, I do not expect the Conservative Party to commit to fair voting. I agree. So that's why it is down to us. I will work with the other opposition parties in the next election. This progressive alliance will stand down candidates for each other, so everyone who wants all future elections to be fair will know who exactly to vote for. No. Like, progressive alliance, no. Just throw that out, because what's progressive and what's an alliance? It's just silly. And also standing down candidates for other candidates? No. This is just trying to have your cake and eat it. Political cakeism. So let's look at the last paragraph. I've seen people suffer under the Conservative Party for over a decade because even though the majority consistently voted against them, their votes were split, with the opposition fighting amongst ourselves. We'll get to that in a second. This country had enough of that. And I know that the electoral reform I am offering will make it harder for Labour to gain an absolute majority. This is so stupid. And then this one, but this is the right thing to do. For our current system lets two parties take voters and their votes for granted. I'm ready to work for yours, but we need to work together. Right, he's right there, the first bit. People have suffered under the Conservative Party for over a decade. It's actually been a lot longer than that. I mean, for Femi, he's only experienced one term of conservatism. I've experienced two. Many other people have experienced more in their life, and it's always been the same. So that's that. Now, what this bit here, the opposition fighting amongst themselves, that's quite annoying, that, because if we put our mind back to the last election, you'll remember that Femi was one of the many people who was doing their best to fight against Labour. People may not like this thought, right? But at the moment, under the current system, because there's no other political movements big enough or the same size as Labour and the Conservative Party, the only way we can get rid of the Conservatives is to vote Labour and to put in a Labour government. And then we need to worry about that problem then, because much like everything in life, you need to deal with things one at a time, you know? One step at a time, we can fix things. This is just, this is quite pie in the sky, I would say. I mean, it's rich that he's talking about people, especially as this is meant to be a speech from Keir Starmer. It's like, what, Mr. There's so much irony in that last bit. So yeah, I mean, let's have a little talk about this speech. He's done well to not mention proportional representation in this, but this is what he's talking about. He's a fairer way of doing elections, fairness, election changes. He's talking about proportional represent, or PR, whatever you want to call it. I have actually, before I did, well, actually, maybe I did do media at the time. When I was at university, I was in a trustee board, so I had to get elected. Now, it wasn't a proportional representation I took part in, it was an alternative vote. It's kind of the same thing, but it's super complex, right? And they're not the way to go, right? For instance, me, I got elected. I didn't get loads of votes. I probably shouldn't have been elected. I don't think I won enough support to get elected, but I did. And this is what these systems do. They let people, they give people participation medals for politics. And the fact is, if you don't feel you did enough in an election thing, or you don't have a right message, and you're getting elected, you're not fit for the job. That's just the way I see it. I vastly disagree with that sort of changing in the electoral system. It's curious that he's only mentioned Belarus here. I mean, is there no other examples of this? And if Belarus is the only other country that uses the same election system as us, then we can point at all the other places which use alternative vote systems or proportional representation systems that are just as in just as bad a state as the UK. He means well, right? I'm just going to I'll wrap this video up by saying Femi means well. I actually quite like Femi and what he does. I worry that he's been sucked into the mainstream political media bubble and he just doesn't realise it because he seems to think he's outside of the mainstream bubble, yet he appears on the Jeremy Vine show every week and on Sky News and stuff. It's like it is what it is. The fact is he means well, and people do mean well, and I think as much as we disagree with it, as much as I disagree with a lot of what he says in his speech, I'm happy to listen to it and I'm happy to give him a platform. I think we will do a lot better if we all talk with each other and we talk about ways in which we can all meet in the middle, whether you're left, whether you're right, whether you're centrist, or whether you're just Femi. We can do it. I don't think his way is the way we need to do it, but he does make some good points, okay? So I'm going to leave it there. It's all in all, I find the speech, it's a bit airy fairy, it's a bit pie in the sky. There's some naiveness there. There's some of that Southern English view that people from South England don't really understand they're doing because they just think that's what everything's like when it's not. But all in all, it's not overly offensive, but it did make me cringe at a few bits. That's everything. Follow, subscribe, whatever. Have a nice weekend. Bye.